My family always seemed perfect from the outside. From the moment Alex was born, everything felt like it was falling into place. Robert and I, together for nearly 25 years, had built a life filled with love, ambition, and hope for our son's future. The perfect family, the perfect home, the perfect life. I remember those early years, the late nights spent rocking Alex to sleep, the mornings filled with laughter as we watched him grow from a curious toddler into a bright young boy. He excelled in school, his teachers praised his work ethic, and he was well liked by his friends. Robert and I made sure that everything Alex needed was provided for tutors for the subjects he struggled with, summer camps that would expand his horizons, and family vacations where we created memories that would last a lifetime. We lived in a beautiful, spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, a house I'd once dreamed of when I was younger. It wasn't just a structure of bricks and mortar. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and warmth. Every corner of it had a story to tell. The living room where Alex and I had spent hours reading together. The kitchen where Robert and I would share meals, laughing about our days. The garden that we had planted together as a family. This house was our heart, our foundation. And then there was the love between Robert and me. It wasn't always easy, but we made it work. We had our disagreements, but we were a team. We made decisions together, supported each other through thick and thin. That was the foundation that had made our family so strong, or so I thought. And then came Maria. Alex met Maria in college. She was stunning, intelligent, and ambitious. At first, I thought nothing of it. He was always surrounded by friends, both men and women, and it seemed only natural that he would eventually meet someone special. But when I first laid eyes on Maria, something didn't sit right with me. She was different from the other girls. Alex had dated more polished, more refined, with an air of confidence that made her stand out. I suppose I should have known something was off from the start, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After all, I wanted Alex to be happy. I wanted him to find someone who would make him smile the way Robert made me smile. Their relationship moved quickly. Too quickly, in hindsight. Alex seemed to fall for Maria as if she were the answer to all his hopes and dreams. He spoke about her with admiration, as if she was some kind of ideal. I watched him change, subtly, at first, but the signs were there. He spent less time with us. His conversations were more about their future together than about his childhood memories, our family's traditions, or the things we had once shared. At first, I told myself it was just a phase. After all, Alex was in his early 20s, discovering who he was and what he wanted out of life. It was natural to want independence, to grow apart from your parents. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was shifting in our relationship. Then came the moment that confirmed my fears. One evening, during a family dinner, I had invited Alex and Maria over. We were sitting around the dining table, Robert at one end, me at the other, and Alex and Maria in the middle. It was supposed to be a simple, pleasant evening catching up, talking about the future, reminiscing about old times. But as soon as Maria spoke, I felt an unsettling change in the air. She complimented me on the house, but her words felt rehearsed, as if she was trying too hard to be polite. "It's so charming," she said, looking around, her gaze lingering on the furniture, the artwork on the walls, the old family portraits. She asked about the house's history, who had built it, and whether I'd ever thought of renovating it. She was so polite, but there was something in her tone that didn't sit right with me. She asked if I had ever considered modernizing the house, upgrading the kitchen, or changing the interior. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking she was just trying to make conversation, maybe offer a little advice. But then she asked, "Has Anyone ever told you how much potential this place has? You know, for the right buyer, this house could be worth so much more. I wasn't sure how to respond. I knew Maria was an ambitious woman, but this felt different. It was as though she wasn't just complimenting the house, she was appraising it, calculating its value, as if she was already considering what it could be worth to someone else. I didn't say anything at the time, but later that night, when Robert and I were alone, I mentioned it to him. "Did you notice how she was looking at the house?" I asked. Robert chuckled, trying to ease my worries. "You're just being paranoid," he said. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next few months were a blur. Maria and Alex's relationship blossomed, and before long, they were talking about marriage. I should have been happy after all. This was my son's happiness, wasn't it? But something inside me twisted every time Maria's name was mentioned. The subtle comments continued. She would casually mention how much money they were making together, how their investments were growing. Her career in real estate was taking off, and soon she was speaking about properties as if they were her territory. Alex, meanwhile, seemed more and more distant from me, caught up in their future plans. When they got engaged, Maria insisted on a grand wedding. "We want it to be special, Mom," Alex said. "Maria deserves the best," and I agreed. Of course I did. Maria wanted a fairy tale wedding, and I couldn't help but think that this was a reflection of her larger-than-life aspirations. She wanted everything to be perfect, just like she wanted her life to be perfect, glamorous, expensive, and sophisticated. I paid for everything, like any mother would. It wasn't that I wanted to buy their love, but I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to be the mother who helped make their dreams come true. The wedding was beautiful, an elaborate affair held in a grand venue. Maria looked radiant in her designer dress, and Alex, my dear Alex, looked as if he had found his place in the world. As I watched them, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away, something that I had no control over. Over the months that followed, the changes became undeniable. They were no longer just a couple starting out. They were a team, a unit. But as their relationship flourished, mine with Alex began to wither. Visits became infrequent. Phone calls shorter, and conversations felt more like transactions than meaningful exchanges. Maria, though charming on the surface, started to dominate their lives. I saw less of my son, and when I did see him, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just a phase, that they were busy with their new life together. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Maria wasn't just influencing Alex, she was slowly pushing me out of his life. And it wasn't just me. She had a way of making everyone feel like they were in her way. A subtle manipulation that made it hard to see her true intentions. And then one day, I found myself in a position I never thought I would be. Feeling like a stranger in my own family, in my own home. I couldn't help but wonder, had I been so blind to the signs? Was I just a mother who loved too much? Or had I ignored the warnings of my heart, the little voices that had tried to tell me that something was wrong? And when I look back now, I realize that the warning signs were always there. I just didn't want to believe them. But Maria's true colors were beginning to show. And soon, I would learn the hard way how far she would go to get what she wanted. The months following Alex and Maria's wedding were some of the most painful of my life. On the surface, everything appeared fine, perhaps even perfect. They were living their lives, establishing careers, and doing what young couples do. But, underneath the smiles, there was a growing tension I couldn't ignore. Maria's influence over Alex had only deepened, and with it, my unease grew. She had a way of making everything seem so easy, so calculated. She spoke of future plans with a certainty that felt rehearsed, almost too perfect, as though she already had everything figured out. The thing that bothered me most wasn't just how she was molding Alex into her ideal version of success. It was the way she began to treat our family, as if we were a nuisance in her, and Alex's perfect little world. It wasn't long before I started hearing more and more about their plans. The conversations that once included me tales of childhood memories, laughter over family holidays, discussions about our traditions became less frequent. Instead, they began to center on money, property, and investments. I had always known that Maria was ambitious, but it was becoming clear that her ambition wasn't just for herself. It was for Alex, for their future together, and most troublingly, for the things that Alex and I shared. One evening, Alex and I were sitting in the living room, having what I thought would be a casual conversation. Maria wasn't home, and it had been a while since we'd had a chance to talk. I remember asking him how things were going with work and their new home, which, at the time, I thought was a great step for them. But his answer was different this time. "I've been thinking, Mum," Alex said, his voice steady, though there was an unfamiliar edge to it. "Maria and I have been talking, and we think it's time to make some changes around here. You've been doing great with the house, but it's a bit outdated, don't you think?" I froze for a moment. "Outdated? What do you mean?" I asked. It's a big house, and it's getting harder to keep up with, right? And we've been looking at some real estate opportunities. Maybe it's time to think about selling it and moving into something more modern." He was speaking so calmly, so rationally, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. My heart sank. I had lived in this house for over 30 years, Robert, and I had bought it when Alex was just a little boy, and it had been our sanctuary. Every corner of that house held memories of our family's laughter, the warmth of our meals together, the cozy nights spent by the fire. I couldn't imagine leaving it behind. "But Alex, this house, it's not just a house," I said, my voice breaking. "It's everything I've worked for, everything your father and I built together. It's more than bricks and mortar. It's home." "I know, Mum," he replied, but his tone was different now, distant. "But Maria and I have bigger plans. We've got to think ahead, think about our future. It's time for us to take things to the next level." I wanted to argue, to tell him that what he was suggesting was a huge mistake, that he didn't understand the significance of this home. But as the words hung in the air, I realized something. Maria's influence had already seeped into every corner of their lives. This wasn't just a casual suggestion, it was a plan. And Alex, the son I had raised, was already sold on it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How had we gotten to this point? How had my family, the family I had worked so hard to build, come to the point where my own son was considering turning his back on me and my home? It didn't take long before the reality of the situation became clear. Maria's ambition wasn't just about making her life better. It was about taking what was mine, what I had spent decades building, and making it hers. I was no longer just a mother. I was a target. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more strange behavior. Maria began spending a lot of time in our neighborhood talking to real estate agents, even coming over uninvited to help with the house. She was full of ideas about renovations, about upgrades, about how much money this house could fetch on the market. At first, I thought she was just being helpful, trying to ease my burden. But as the weeks wore on, it became clear she was angling for something more. Then, one afternoon, I received a letter from a lawyer. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Maria had been working behind the scenes, forging legal documents, claiming that the house was now jointly owned by Alex and her. The letter stated that they were preparing to sell the house, and I was being asked to sign over the rights to the property immediately. I was stunned. The letter was filled with legal jargon, making it clear that Maria had planned this for months. She had used her charm to convince Alex that selling the house was the right move, that it would be in their best interest financially. But I knew better. I knew that Maria wasn't interested in the house for its value. She was interested in it for what it represented. It was a symbol of control, of ownership, and it was clear that she wanted it all for herself. I immediately called Alex. "What is this, Alex?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this? Why are you letting her do this to me?" There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Alex spoke, his voice cold, almost detached. "Mum, you don't understand. Maria and I have discussed it. This is just how things need to be. We want a fresh start. We need to think about the future. Your future." I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "What about my future, Alex? What about everything I've done for you? This house is my life, and now you're just going to throw it away." "I'm not throwing it away, Mom," he said. "We're just moving on. We need to be realistic about this. You're not getting any younger, and Maria and I are trying to plan for our own future. We can't keep holding on to the past." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The words cut through me like a knife. My own son, my flesh and blood, was treating me like an obstacle. And Maria, the woman I had never trusted, was the one pulling the strings. The next few weeks were a blur. I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion. I couldn't understand how Alex had changed so quickly. He had been my little boy, the one I had raised with love and care, the one I had sacrificed so much for. And now, here he was, taking sides with the woman who was trying to take everything I had. I tried to talk to him, to reason with him, but he was distant, cold. Maria had already worked her magic on him. He was no longer the son I knew. He had become someone else, someone I didn't recognize. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that the fight for my home wasn't just about property. It was about my place in this family. And with every passing moment, I was losing that place. I was losing Alex. And Maria? She was still there, behind the scenes, making sure the plan was unfolding just as she had orchestrated. She wasn't just after the house. She was after everything I had worked for, everything I had given my life to. And Alex, the one person I had trusted above all, was letting it happen. I didn't know how much longer I could keep fighting, but one thing was certain. I couldn't let this go without a fight. If I lost this house, if I lost my family, I would have nothing left. And I wasn't about to let Maria steal everything I had worked for, no matter what it took. The days that followed felt like an endless storm. Every time I picked up the phone, my hands would shake, bracing for another conversation with Alex or worse, Maria. It was like I was living in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. As much as I tried to convince myself that things would get better, that Alex would come to his senses and see the truth, I knew deep down that I was slowly losing him. He wasn't the son I had raised anymore, that my lawyer had been working tirelessly to fight Maria's claims. But it was a constant uphill battle. She was ruthless in her pursuit of the house, and she knew exactly how to play the game. She used her charm to manipulate everyone she came into contact with, and she had Alex wrapped around her finger. As the months dragged on, it became painfully clear that Maria wasn't going to back down. She had planned this all from the very beginning. I began to feel like a stranger in my own life. I spent more and more time at home, trying to process everything that was happening. But the house that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt cold and empty. It was as though the walls themselves had turned against me. The memories of Alex's childhood, the laughter we once shared, had all been tainted by this new reality. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a way to undo the damage. One day, after weeks of silence from Alex, I received a call from Maria's lawyer. I knew this was the beginning of the end. The words in the letter had left a bitter taste in my mouth, but hearing them spoken aloud felt even worse. Maria was demanding that I vacate the property within 30 days, or face legal action. I was stunned. The audacity, the coldness was overwhelming. How could she be so heartless? And worse, how could Alex allow this to happen? I called Alex immediately, my heart pounding in my chest, hoping that he would finally see the truth, that he would stand up to Maria and do what was right. But when I heard his voice on the other end of the line, it wasn't the voice of my son, it was the voice of a stranger. Alex, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. What is this? Why are you letting Maria do this to me? This is my home, my life. You can't just let her take it away. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him sigh, as though he was tired of this conversation, as if he had already made up his mind. Mum, he said, his voice distant. You don't understand. Maria and I are doing what's best for us. This house, this place isn't part of the future we want to build. You've got to let go. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I had always tried to be strong for Alex, to give him everything he needed to succeed, to be happy. And now, he was telling me to let go of the only thing that had ever truly been mine. Let go, I whispered. Let go of everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed. You're asking me to just walk away from the home your father and I built, from the life I've known for over 30 years. Alex, I gave you everything. I gave you my love, my time, my heart. How can you do this to me? Mum, please, Alex said, his voice becoming more impatient. This isn't about you. This is about Maria and me building our life together. We've made our decision, and I can't go back on it. I felt the tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had to be strong, even if my heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. Alex, please, I begged, my voice trembling. Don't let her do this. You know, I've always been there for you. Don't let her take me away. But it was too late. I could feel the distance between us growing wider, like an impenetrable wall. He wasn't just siding with Maria anymore. He was fully embracing her plans, her vision for their future. And I, his mother, the woman who had given him everything, was being cast aside like some old, irrelevant relic of the past. The next few weeks were nothing but a blur of paperwork, legal threats, and a constant sense of betrayal. The house once, my sanctuary, had become a battleground. I was no longer just fighting for my home. I was fighting for my family, for the bond that had once been so strong. But with each passing day, it became clearer that I was losing the battle. Maria's presence in my life grew more and more suffocating. She would show up unannounced, pretending to be concerned about my well-being, offering advice on how I should be handling the situation. But her words were laced with venom, her actions calculated and cold. She would ask me about the house, as if it were just another transaction, another deal to be made. I could see the way her eyes gleamed when she spoke about selling it, about the profits they would make. It was never about family. It was about what she could take, what she could control. And Alex? He was always there, standing by her side, nodding in agreement with every word she spoke. He had become her puppet, her pawn, and I was left on the sidelines, watching as my own son turned against me. One evening, I found myself sitting in the living room, staring at the walls that had witnessed so much of my life. The memories were still fresh, still vivid, but they were slowly being erased, replaced by the harsh reality of what was happening. I thought of Robert, my late husband, and how proud he would have been of the life we had built. How proud he would have been of Alex. But now I was alone. And the son I had loved with all my heart had become a stranger. Someone I didn't recognize. It was then that I realized something even more painful than losing the house. I had lost my son. Not to Maria's manipulation or her schemes, but to his own choices. He had chosen her over me. He had chosen her vision of their future over the bond we once shared. And in that moment I understood that no matter what I did, I could never go back to the way things were. The legal proceedings continued, but I was no longer fighting for the house. I was fighting for my dignity, for the woman I had been before all of this began. I signed the papers, relinquishing my claim to the house. But I knew, deep down, that no matter what happened, Maria would never have the power to take away the woman I had become. In the end, I walked away from the house. The house that had once been filled with love and laughter was now nothing more than a symbol of betrayal. But I didn't let it break me. I couldn't. Because despite everything that had happened, despite the betrayal of my son and the coldness of Maria, I still had something they couldn't take from me. My strength. As I packed my things and left the house for the last time, I made a promise to myself. I would rebuild. I would find peace. And one day, when I was stronger, when I had healed from this wound, I would look back on this chapter of my life not as a failure, but as a lesson. A lesson about the fragility of family, the importance of boundaries, and the strength that comes from letting go. And though I may never have the relationship with Alex that I once dreamed of, I would always carry the love I had for him in my heart, no matter where life took me.